Stay with me. Because what looked like an accident that night would quietly unravel an empire no one thought could fall. The glass slipped first. Crystal against marble. A sharp, delicate crack that cut through the low hum of a $5 million charity gala, like something breaking that couldn't be fixed. Then came the silence. Olivia Hayes didn't scream. She didn't even have time to react. 1 second she was standing beneath the chandelier, her hand resting lightly over the gentle curve of her 7-month pregnancy, smiling politely at people who didn't really see her. The next, her body swayed, just slightly, like a candle flickering before it goes out. The champagne flute hit the floor, spilling pale gold across polished stone, and for a brief, surreal moment, every eye in the room followed the liquid instead of the woman. That's how invisibility works. It doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds. Quietly. Systematically. Olivia's knees bent as if the air had been pulled from the room. Her breath caught. Not dramatic, not loud, just gone. A single inhale that never quite returned. Around her, tuxedos shifted, heels paused mid-step, conversations clipped into silence. Somewhere in the distance, a violin kept playing, unaware that something far more important had just begun. Because what no one in that room knew, not the donors, not the executives, not even the man standing 10 feet away pretending not to notice, was that Olivia Hayes had been preparing for this moment for months. And this was only the beginning. 6 months earlier, Olivia had learned how to disappear without ever leaving a room. It started with small things. Missed calls. Short answers. A husband who once looked at her like she was the only person in the world now speaking, as if she were a minor inconvenience on a packed calendar. Ethan Cole didn't yell. He didn't need to. His silence did the work for him. His distance was precise, controlled, almost professional. And Olivia, like so many before her, tried to explain it away. Stress. Business pressure. The kind of excuses that sound reasonable until they start repeating themselves. But patterns don't lie. And Olivia noticed everything. The late night. Messages he never opened in front of her. The subtle shift in tone when certain names appeared. The way he stopped asking about the baby. Not cold. Just absent. That's what made it worse. Because absence is harder to fight than anger. You can argue with anger. You can't argue with someone who's already gone. By the time the invitation arrived for the Cole Foundation Gala, an event designed to showcase power, influence, and carefully curated perfection, Olivia already knew more than Ethan thought she did. She knew about the hidden accounts. She knew about the contracts structured in ways that erased her name from everything that once belonged to both of them. And most importantly, she knew about the quiet plan forming behind closed doors, a plan that didn't include her future or the child she carried. But Olivia didn't confront him. Not yet. Because timing matters. Truth, revealed too early, can be buried. Revealed at the right moment, it destroys everything. Back in the present, the marble floor felt colder than it should have as Olivia steadied herself, her fingers brushing against the edge of a nearby table. Someone reached out, hesitant, unsure whether to help or simply observe. Across the room, Ethan finally turned. Not rushing, not panicking, just watching, calculating. And for a fraction of a second, their eyes met. No shouting, no accusation, just recognition. Because in that look, Olivia saw it clearly. He thought she was still the same woman. The one who stayed quiet. The one who endured. The one who would fall and stay down. He was wrong. And before anyone could speak, before anyone could restore the illusion of control that filled that room, Olivia Hayes lifted her head. Slow, steady, intentional. And in that silence, something shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. Because empires don't collapse all at once. They crack, exactly like glass on marble. The room did not move, but everything inside it shifted. A single heartbeat passed, then another, and Olivia Hayes straightened her spine as if gravity itself had just lost its authority over her. Someone whispered her name, soft, uncertain, like they were testing whether she would respond. She did not. Instead, she reached down, not to pick up the broken glass, not to apologize, not to explain, but to steady the small, almost invisible bracelet resting against her wrist. It was delicate, nearly weightless, the kind of thing no one would notice unless they were looking for it. And no one in that room was looking closely enough. Not yet. Across the marble floor, Ethan Cole finally began to move, his shoes cutting a measured path through the crowd, each step controlled, deliberate, as if he were approaching a business negotiation rather than his own wife. His expression was composed, almost concerned, the kind of concern that photographs well and convinces strangers. "Olivia," he said, his voice low, smooth, carrying just enough for those nearest to hear. "Are you all right?" The question hung in the air, polished and perfect, but empty, because he already knew the answer he wanted. Weak, unstable, fragile, a narrative he had been quietly building for months. Olivia looked at him, not up, not down, but directly, and for the first time in a very long time, she did not try to read his face. She already had. 6 months earlier, it had started with a document she was never supposed to see. A routine email, misdirected, buried beneath dozens of others, its subject line deliberately vague. Most people would have deleted it without opening it. Olivia did not. Inside were numbers that did not make sense, transfers that did not align with the accounts she knew, and names, not just business entities, but individuals. One of them repeated, again and again. That was the first crack. Not dramatic, not explosive, just enough to let the light through. She had not confronted him then. Instead, she had done something far more dangerous. She had stayed quiet and started watching. Patterns formed quickly once she knew where to look. Late meetings that did not exist on official schedules. Legal consultations that were never discussed at home. Subtle changes in language, in tone, in the way Ethan referred to our future, slowly shifting to something less inclusive, something conditional. And then came the call she was never meant to overhear. It was late, past midnight. The kind of hour when truth slips out because people believe no one is listening. Olivia had been awake, not by choice, but because the steady rhythm of the life growing inside her refused to let her sleep. She had stepped into the hallway, drawn by the faint glow of light beneath a closed door. Ethan's voice was calm, controlled. After the gala, he had said. A pause, then quieter. It will be easier then. Easier. Such a simple word. Such a dangerous one. Back in the present, Olivia inhaled slowly, her hand resting protectively over her stomach, feeling the subtle movement beneath her palm. Proof. Reality. Something no document could erase. Around them, the crowd began to breathe again, the moment of shock dissolving into cautious curiosity. People leaned closer, not to help, but to witness. Because something was unfolding, an instinct told them it mattered. Ethan extended his hand, a gesture meant to guide her, to control the scene, to restore order before it slipped beyond him. Olivia glanced at it briefly, then back to his face. And she did something unexpected. She smiled. Not wide, not warm, just enough to unsettle him. Because in that small, precise moment, Ethan Cole realized something he had not accounted for. She was not reacting the way she was supposed to. And when someone stops following the script you wrote for them, the entire story begins to fall apart. The smile did not last long, but it did not need to. It was enough. Just a fraction of a second, just enough to break the rhythm Ethan thought he controlled. His hand remained extended between them, suspended in the air like a question no one dared to answer. Around them, the quiet murmur of the gala began to return, but softer now, restrained, as if the entire room understood that something unseen was unfolding beneath the surface. Olivia did not take his hand. Instead, she shifted her weight, steady and composed, her movements slow not because she was weak, but because she was choosing every second with precision. "I am fine," she said, her voice calm, clear, carrying farther than it should have in a room designed to absorb sound. It was not the answer he expected. It was not the answer anyone expected, because fine was not fragile. Fine was not unstable. Fine did not support the story he had been preparing. Ethan lowered his hand slowly, almost imperceptibly, but the change registered. A small crack. Another one. 6 months earlier, Olivia had learned that truth did not need to be loud to be powerful. It only needed to be placed correctly. After the late-night call, after the word easier echoed in her mind long after the hallway had gone dark, she stopped reacting and started collecting. Not emotionally. Strategically. She did not confront him about the accounts. She did not mention the names. Instead, she asked simple questions. Casual. Innocent. The kind that never triggered suspicion. And every answer he gave added another piece. Another confirmation. Another layer to something much larger than she had first imagined. It was never just about leaving her. That would have been simple, clean. This was something else. Something structured, designed. There were legal drafts she was never shown, agreements written in language so precise it almost felt clinical. Terms that shifted responsibility, clauses that protected assets, and one detail that stayed with her longer than anything else. A provision regarding guardianship. Not shared, not equal, conditional, temporary, replaceable. Back in the present, a server approached cautiously, offering a fresh glass, attempting to restore normalcy, to smooth over the disruption like it had never happened. Olivia declined with a slight movement of her hand. She did not need anything from this room. Not comfort, not validation, not permission. Across the crowd, a woman in a silver dress watched closely, her gaze sharp, calculating, too focused to be casual. Olivia noticed her immediately. She had seen that face before, not in person, but in the margins of documents, in reflected images, in the background of something that was never meant to be examined too closely. Another piece of the pattern stepping into the light. Ethan followed Olivia's line of sight for just a moment, then redirected his attention quickly, too quickly, back to her. That was all she needed. Confirmation did not always arrive in words. Sometimes it lived in the spaces people try to hide. We should step outside, Ethan said quietly, his tone shifting, less performative now, more controlled, more urgent. Not concern, containment. He was trying to move the scene somewhere private, somewhere manageable, somewhere he could rewrite what was happening before it became something else entirely. Olivia let the suggestion hang between them for a second longer than necessary. Then she shook her head. Just once. Simple. Final. No, she said. The word was soft, but it landed with more weight than anything she had said all night. Around them, the air tightened again. Because that single refusal did more than reject his request. It rejected the entire structure he had built around her. The silence that followed was no longer uncertain. It was expectant, and for the first time, Ethan Cole was not in control of what came next. The word lingered in the air long after Olivia said it. No. Simple. Quiet. Irreversible. It did not echo, but it settled, like dust after something unseen had shifted beneath the foundation of the room. Ethan did not respond immediately. For the first time that evening, there was a pause in him, not calculated, not intentional, but real. A delay. Small, but unmistakable. And people noticed. Not consciously, not all at once, but enough. Because power, when it hesitates, becomes visible. Olivia did not move away from him. She did not step back, did not lower her gaze, did not retreat into the version of herself everyone in that room expected. Instead, she adjusted the sleeve of her dress with a slow, careful motion, her fingers brushing once more against the thin bracelet at her wrist. It caught the light briefly. A soft reflection. Easy to miss, unless you knew exactly what it was. 6 months earlier, that bracelet had not meant anything. Just a gift. Or at least that was how it appeared. It had arrived without ceremony, in a plain box, no note, no explanation. Most people would have ignored it. Olivia did not. She had turned it over in her hand, noticing the weight was slightly off, the design too precise to be purely decorative. It was subtle, intentionally so, and when she finally understood what it could do, she realized something else. She was not the only one who had been watching. Back in the present, a shift occurred at the edge of the room, barely perceptible. A man in a dark suit stepped forward, not toward the center, but along the perimeter, his movement blending into the background of servers and staff. He did not draw attention. He did not need to. Olivia did not look at him directly, but she felt the change, the quiet confirmation that the timing was aligning exactly as it needed to. Ethan exhaled slowly, recovering, reassembling the version of himself that never lost control. Olivia, he said again, softer now, almost careful, this is not the place. The words were different this time. Not for the audience. For her. A warning disguised as concern. A final attempt to contain something that was already slipping beyond him. Olivia tilted her head slightly, considering him, as if weighing whether his words still held any meaning. Then she glanced past him, just for a moment, toward the far end of the ballroom where the stage had been set for speeches that had not yet begun. The large display screens behind it remained dark, waiting, empty. For now. That was when Ethan noticed it too. Not the screens. Not yet. But the direction of her attention. And something in his expression tightened. A realization forming too late to stop. You should sit down, he said, more firmly now, his tone sharpening just enough to reveal the pressure underneath. You are not well. There it was. The narrative. Introduced gently. Positioned carefully. The first move in a story he had already rehearsed. Olivia looked at him for a long second, long enough for the silence to stretch uncomfortably around them. Then, without raising her voice, without changing her expression, she answered, I am exactly where I need to be. The sentence did not sound like defiance. It sounded like certainty. And certainty is harder to dismantle than emotion. Around them, the crowd was no longer pretending not to watch. Conversations had slowed. Eyes lingered longer than politeness allowed. Something was building, an instinct told them to stay. Because moments like this do not repeat. At the edge of the stage, a technician adjusted something behind the console, his movements quick, efficient, almost invisible. Another small shift. Another piece falling into place. Ethan followed Olivia's gaze this time, his eyes landing briefly on the dark screens, then returning to her with a flicker of something new. Not anger. Not yet. Something closer to recognition. Because in that instant, he understood what she was about to do. Not the details. Not the full extent. But enough. Enough to know that whatever happened next would not stay contained within this room. Olivia inhaled slowly, her hand resting over her stomach once more, feeling the steady, reassuring movement beneath her palm. Then she took a single step forward, not away from him, but past him, toward the center of the room, toward the place where everything was about to change. And behind her, unnoticed by most, the screens flickered once. Just once. Like a heartbeat before the storm. The flicker did not last long, but it was enough. A brief pulse across the dark screens, subtle, almost accidental, like a system testing itself before coming fully alive. Most of the room did not notice. They were still watching Olivia, still trying to understand why she was moving toward the center instead of away from the tension she had just created. But a few people did notice. The ones who paid attention to details. The ones who understood that nothing in a room like this ever happened by accident. Olivia walked with measured steps, neither hurried nor hesitant, her heels soft against the marble, each movement controlled, intentional, as if she had rehearsed this moment not in front of a mirror, but in silence, over and over, until every second belonged to her. Behind her, Ethan remained still for just a fraction too long before following, his composure returning in layers, his expression smoothing into something presentable again, something that suggested authority rather than uncertainty. But the distance between them had already changed. Not physically, something deeper, something no one could easily name. 6 months earlier, Olivia had learned that timing was not about speed. It was about patience. After discovering the first irregularities, after hearing the late-night call, she had waited. Not because she was unsure, because she needed to see how far it went. And it went further than she expected. There were meetings she was never meant to know about, conducted in offices she had never visited, with people whose names appeared nowhere in official records. She did not confront them. She mapped them, quietly, piece by piece. Patterns turned into connections. Connections turned into intent. And intent revealed something undeniable. This was not just about separation. It was about removal. Clean. Documented. Legally insulated. The kind of process designed to leave no trace of resistance. But systems message delivery timed out. Please try again. The flicker did not draw attention immediately, but it changed everything. A brief pulse of light across the dark screens behind the stage, gone before most people could even register it, like a signal meant only for those who were already paying attention. Olivia did not turn around to look. She did not need to. She already knew. Timing had always been the difference between truth and failure, and she had waited too long to get it wrong now. The room shifted again, more noticeably this time, as the subtle hum of conversation thinned into something sharper, more focused. People were no longer pretending to be interested in anything else. They were watching her, watching him, watching the space between them where control was slowly dissolving. Ethan took a step forward, closing the distance she had just created, his voice lower now, edged with something he had not shown before. Olivia, whatever you think you are doing, stop. It was not a request. It was not concern. It was the first honest thing he had said all night. Around them, a few heads turned closer, drawn not by volume, but by tone. Because authority sounds different when it is no longer secure. Olivia did not stop. She continued walking, each step measured, her heels soft against the marble floor, her posture steady, her breathing even. The center of the room was not far, but it felt like a different space entirely, like crossing a line no one else could see. 6 months earlier, she had crossed that line in silence. The bracelet had not just been a detail. It had been a beginning. Once she understood its purpose, she began to understand something else. Someone had anticipated what she would need before she even knew she needed it. Not protection, not rescue, leverage. The kind that did not rely on emotion or persuasion, but on something far more difficult to deny. Evidence. At first, it had unsettled her. The idea that someone else had been watching the same patterns, noticing the same inconsistencies, moving quietly alongside her without revealing themselves. But over time, that feeling changed. Not into trust, into alignment. Because whoever had sent it did not interfere. They did not direct her. They simply made sure she had a way to see clearly when the moment came. Back in the present, the technician at the edge of the stage adjusted one final control, his hand pausing for a fraction of a second before pressing it down. This time, the screens did not flicker. They came alive. Soft at first, a faint glow spreading across the dark surface, pulling attention like gravity. Conversations stopped completely now. Heads turned in unison, drawn by instinct toward the unexpected shift in light. Ethan saw it too. And this time, he did not look away. His expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. A tightening around the eyes. A calculation breaking down mid-process. Because he knew, not what exactly was about to appear, but that whatever it was not part of his plan. Turn that off, he said sharply, not to Olivia, but toward the stage, toward anyone who would respond. No one moved. The command hung in the air, unanswered, as if the room itself had decided to stop listening to him. Olivia reached the center and finally turned, not toward Ethan, but toward the audience, toward the dozens of faces now fixed on her, waiting without understanding why. She did not raise her voice. She did not gesture. She simply stood there, composed, present, undeniable. And behind her, the first image appeared. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just clear. A document. Clean lines. Legal language. Familiar names. The kind of thing most people would not understand at a glance, but enough to signal something important. Something real. A murmur moved through the crowd, low, uncertain, like a current beginning to build. Ethan took another step forward, faster this time, but he stopped just short, as if something invisible had drawn a boundary he could not cross. Olivia met his eyes once more, and this time there was no softness left, no hesitation, no trace of the woman he thought he had already rewritten. Only clarity. And in that clarity was something far more dangerous than anger. Certainty. The kind that does not need to convince anyone, because it already knows exactly what is about to happen next. The murmur did not stay quiet for long. It spread, slow at first, then sharper, like a ripple turning into a current that no one could ignore. People leaned forward, eyes narrowing, trying to understand what they were seeing on the screens, trying to connect names, numbers, fragments of meaning that felt just out of reach. Olivia did not rush it. She let them look. She let them think. Because confusion was the first step before realization, and realization was where everything changed. Ethan's voice cut through the room again, tighter now, controlled but no longer smooth. "This is a misunderstanding," he said, louder this time, projecting not just to Olivia, but to everyone within earshot. Internal documents. Confidential. Taken out of context. The words came quickly, practiced, as if he had already imagined needing them. Around the room, a few people nodded instinctively, drawn to the authority in his tone, the familiarity of someone used to leading narratives. But not everyone. Because the screen did not go dark. It shifted. Another document replaced the first. This one simpler. Clearer. A transfer record. Dates aligned. Amounts precise. Names repeated. The same names Olivia had seen months ago, now impossible to ignore. The murmur changed. Less uncertain. More focused. 6 months earlier, Olivia had not understood the full picture. She had only seen pieces. But pieces, when placed correctly, forms something undeniable. She remembered sitting alone in the quiet of their home, the glow of her laptop reflecting in the window, her hand resting over her stomach as she traced patterns through transactions that should not have existed. It had taken hours, then days, then weeks. Not because the information was hidden well, but because it was hidden in plain sight, scattered just enough to avoid attention. But Olivia had nothing but time, and patience, and a reason that made every detail matter. Back in the present, Ethan took another step forward, his composure tightening, his control narrowing. "Olivia," he said, his voice dropping again, more dangerous now in its quiet. "Turn it off." Not a request, not even a warning, a demand. Olivia looked at him, and for a moment, she almost seemed to consider it. Almost. Then she shook her head once, the same simple motion as before, the same finality. Behind her, the screen shifted again. This time, it was not a document. It was audio. A waveform appeared first, abstract, unfamiliar to most, but followed quickly by sound. A voice. Ethan's voice. Calm, measured, recognizable. After the gala, it said. A pause. Then softer. "It will be easier then." The room did not just go quiet. It held its breath. Because hearing something changes everything. Words cannot be reinterpreted when they are spoken in your own voice. Ethan froze. Not completely. Not visibly to everyone. But enough. Enough for Olivia to see it. Enough for the illusion to fracture in a way that could not be repaired with explanation. Around them, people were no longer whispering. They were watching. Closely. Intently. Because this was no longer a misunderstanding. It was something else. Something real. Ethan exhaled slowly, forcing his expression back into place, but it did not hold the same weight anymore. "You do not understand what you are doing," he said, each word deliberate, as if control could still be rebuilt through precision. Olivia did not answer him. She did not need to, because the truth was no longer something she had to explain. It was something they were all witnessing together. At the edge of the room, the woman in the silver dress stepped slightly closer, her expression no longer hidden, her attention fixed on the screen, on. The name that appeared again, unmistakable now. Another piece of the pattern stepping fully into view. Olivia turned slightly, just enough to face the audience more directly, her presence steady, her silence intentional. And behind her, the screen changed once more. This time, the image lingered longer. A contract. Clean. Final. A clause highlighted in sharp contrast. Terms that no longer looked like business. Terms that looked like removal, replacement, erasure. The murmur rose again, but this time it carried something new. Recognition. Because the story Ethan had been building was no longer the only one in the room. And the one replacing it was not his to control. The room did not erupt. It did something far more unsettling. It went still. Not silent in the way of confusion, but silent in the way people become when they realize they are witnessing something irreversible. The contract on the screen did not need explanation anymore. The highlighted clause spoke clearly enough, even to those unfamiliar with legal language. It was not about partnership. It was not about protection. It was about removal. Clean. Calculated. Final. Ethan's jaw tightened, just slightly, but it was enough. Enough to betray that the structure he had built so carefully was no longer holding. He took one more step forward, this time closing the distance completely, his voice low, controlled, but carrying an edge that had not been there before. "You are making a mistake," he said, each word measured, deliberate, as if he could still shape the outcome through force of will alone. "You think this will help you, but it will not." Olivia looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, but with something far more disarming. Clarity. The kind that does not react. The kind that already understands the ending. "No," she said quietly. "This is the part where it stops helping you." The words did not rise. They did not need to. Because behind her, the screen shifted again. This time, there was no build-up. No gradual reveal. Just a single image. A signed authorization. Time-stamped. Verified. And beneath it, a name that had not yet been spoken aloud that night, but one that several people in the room immediately recognized. A legal oversight authority. External. Independent. Not connected to Ethan's network. Not influenced by his reach. The murmur that followed was different from before. It was sharper. Focused. Because this was no longer internal. It was no longer something that could be contained within private agreements and quiet settlements. It had moved beyond him. 6 months earlier, Olivia had not known who sent the bracelet. She still did not know, but she had discovered what it connected to. Not just recordings, not just access, but a chain, a network designed for one purpose: to make sure certain truths could not be buried once they surfaced. It was not protection. It was inevitability. Back in the present, the man who had been moving along the perimeter stepped forward again, no longer blending into the background. His presence was subtle, but official, a badge, not displayed openly, but visible enough to those who knew what to look for. He did not approach Olivia. He approached Ethan. Not aggressively, not urgently, just directly. "Mr. Cole," he said, his tone calm, professional, carrying a weight that did not need volume. "We need to speak with you." The shift in the room was immediate. Not dramatic, not chaotic, but definitive, because authority had changed hands, and everyone felt it. Ethan did not move right away. His eyes remained on Olivia, searching, calculating, trying to find something he could still use, some angle that had not yet been closed. But there was nothing left to adjust, no narrative left to reshape, because the story was no longer his. Around them, people were no longer pretending to be neutral. Some stepped back slightly, creating space. Others leaned in, not out of curiosity anymore, but recognition. The kind that comes when power rearranges itself in real time. Olivia did not step away. She did not speak again. She simply stood there, her hand resting over her stomach, her breathing steady, her posture unchanged. And for the first time that night, she did not feel like she was standing in his world. It had shifted, subtly, completely. Ethan finally exhaled, a controlled breath that did not quite hide the fracture. Underneath, and turned slightly toward the man beside him. Not surrendering, not yet, but no longer leading. And as that moment settled, as the weight of everything that had just unfolded pressed quietly into the room, Olivia allowed herself one small movement. She lowered her gaze for just a second, her hand pressing gently against the life beneath her palm. Not for reassurance, for acknowledgement. Because some battles are not won with noise. They are won the moment the truth refuses to stay hidden any longer. No one spoke when he finally stepped back. Not because they were unsure, but because the outcome no longer required commentary. The man beside Ethan did not rush him, did not touch him, did not force anything. He simply waited, patient, certain, the kind of certainty that comes from knowing the next step is no longer optional. Ethan adjusted his jacket slowly. A familiar gesture, one he had used countless times to regain composure, to reset control, to remind himself and everyone else in the room who he was. But this time, the gesture did not carry the same weight. It looked practiced. It looked rehearsed. And for the first time, it looked ineffective. Around them, the room had subtly restructured itself. Conversations did not resume. Music did not return. The gala, designed to celebrate power and influence, now held something far more honest. Consequence. Olivia remained where she stood, her presence steady, her silence intentional, her attention no longer fixed on him. She did not need to watch what happened next. She already knew. 6 months earlier, she had believed that survival meant endurance. Staying quiet, waiting, hoping something would change. But survival, she learned, was not passive. It required clarity. It required choice. And sometimes, it required letting everything break exactly where it needed to. The screens behind her dimmed slightly, not turning off, but no longer demanding attention. They had done their work. The truth, once seen, does not need to be repeated. It settles. It lingers. It reshapes everything around it. Ethan finally moved, not forward, not toward her, but in the direction of the man who had addressed him. Not resisting, not agreeing. Simply moving because there was no other direction left to take. As he passed, for a brief moment, he glanced at Olivia again. Not with anger, not even with denial. Something quieter, something closer to recognition. As if he had finally understood that the outcome had been decided long before this night. Olivia did not respond to the look. She did not acknowledge it. Because some realizations arrived too late to matter. The crowd parted just enough to let them through. A silent corridor forming without instruction, without hesitation. People stepped back, not out of fear, but out of instinct, creating space for something that no longer belonged to them. And just like that, The center of attention shifted away from him. Not dramatically, not loudly, but completely. Olivia exhaled slowly, a breath she had not realized she had been holding, her hand once again resting gently over her stomach. The movement beneath her palm was steady, present, unaffected by the noise, the tension, the unraveling that had just taken place. Proof that some things remain untouched, no matter how much everything else changes. She turned slightly, her gaze moving across the room, not searching for approval, not measuring reactions, simply observing. Faces that once overlooked her now held something different. Not pity, not curiosity, respect. Quiet, unspoken, earned in a way that could not be given or taken away. Without urgency, without hesitation, Olivia stepped away from the center. Not escaping, not retreating, just leaving. Each step carried the same calm precision as before, her posture unchanged, her pace unhurried. No one stopped her. No one questioned her. Because there was nothing left to ask. At the edge of the ballroom, near the entrance where the night had begun hours earlier, she paused for just a second. Not to look back. She did not turn around. She did not need to see what was behind her to know it was over. Instead, she lifted her chin slightly, her expression composed, her presence whole in a way it had not been for a very long time. And then she walked forward, out of the room, out of the version of her life that had tried to define her, into something quieter, something unknown, but finally, something that belonged to her. Because some men lose control the moment the truth is spoken, and some women when the moment they decide they will no longer stay silent.